This is great, man.
I was just looking at the pictures on the wall back there, and it's got all the guests that have been here, but the coolest one was Henry Winkler, the Fonz, giving a double thumbs up.
The double thumbs. We
Yeah,
do the Fonz.
what a great guy.
It's pretty awesome.
Amazing.
I thought you were about to say Henry Rollins for a second. Also a cool guest.
Also a great guy.
But in arguably Henry Winkler, notch above. In the world of Henrys.
If Henry Winkler and Henry Rollins got in a fight, Henry Winkler would win.
Every time.
Because he's the Fonz.
He's the Fonz. And I don't even think Henry Rollins would argue that.
Yeah, he wouldn't even. Henry Rollins would not fight Henry Winkler.
No.
In a conversation you guys never thought you'd hear today at Build.
This is going to be the first 15 to 20 minutes of this conversation, just so you guys know. So we're going to figure out who's in which camp. Congratulations. Guys, I can't help but do it one more time. Chris Jericho, make some noise. Come on. How cool. How cool. Chris, congratulations on the book, man. I got a second to talk to you backstage, tell you I already read through some of it, most of it, all of it, and there's so many great parts I want to talk to. Before we get into this book, how are you doing, man? How's your weekend? How's your week going? How are you?
You actually care about me. What a fine, nice host.
I'm gonna hang out with you for a little bit. I want to know how you're doing, man.
I'll tell you, it's really cool because when you spend a lot of time to write a book, and it takes a long time, hours and hours and hours and hours, this is the fun part. When it actually comes out and you start getting to hear people's reactions. I like this story. This was funny. This part, I got something out of this. So how am I doing? I'm doing great because my 4th book comes out tomorrow. That's great. Yes.
The eve of release. Well, that's good to hear. A lot of people, we get people in here all the time. The whole point of this venue is to come in, have a nice conversation, but talk about like a cool thing that you have coming out. So I get a lot of people that come in here. They're a little anxious. They're a little nervous. They're a little scared. You've worked so hard on this thing. You're putting it out into the world. Now that this is your 4th book, or let's say in general, with all the different creative endeavors you have you ever found yourself in that place of maybe anxious or scared? Well, I know now you're good.
I don't think, not anxious or scared, but it's more of like trying to figure out a new way of bringing these stories to my fans, to the readers, to the people. So I did 3 autobiographies. All of them are big successes. All of them are New York Times bestsellers, all within about an 8-year span. So I wanted to write another book, but I thought to write a 4th autobiography in 10 years, kind of pretentious. You know, I'm not Jack Kerouac or something like this. So how do I do something different? And I get asked all the time, how did you make it into wrestling? How did you make it into rock and roll? How do you do all these things you do? And so I thought that might be an interesting thing. How did I do this? And I started to put together 20 principles, lessons that I learned from various people throughout the years. Friends, celebrities, fictional characters, Gene Simmons, Vince McMahon, Steve Austin, Yoda, everybody in between. People and some you don't even know. Yeah. And all of these lessons kind of helped me to realize that I had a very focused way of doing things, and it's all based around the principle of no is a 4-letter word, which I find it is a profanity because people accept the word no. They throw the word no out quite often without even really delving into it and thinking about it. So I wanted to deconstruct that word no and realize that you can always get what you want done. You can always make it happen. You just have to have a little bit of help with the way you think and the way you deal with life, and that's where the 20 principles come into play, and that's what no is a 4-letter word is all about.
I think you hit that nail right on the head, and it almost works too, if I can say, it's like almost like a companion piece to the other books, because the other books that you've written in the past have told your story. They've told how you became a wrestler, how you got into that world, but this is sort of a little more behind that curtain.
Well, yeah,
right?
Don't get me wrong, it's still filled with ridiculous stories of me doing stupid shit, right? But this isn't like some kind of a textbook that you're going to read, and like the Pythagorean theory says you should. It's stuff like, the first one is like the Jericho principle is that you have to believe in yourself or no one else will. The David Bowie principle, you have to reinvent yourself and keep things fresh and keep things moving. The Vince McMahon principle, work hard and then work harder. All very, very basic ideas, but if you don't think about them and don't utilize that, you fall into complacency and don't get what you want accomplished.
Totally. Well, one of the things I love that you do here is that I'm hesitant to call it like a self-help, but it's not a self-help book. It is filled with valuable advice, but these are incredible stories. And then there's a lesson to be learned or something to be gleaned from that story, you always are where you're meant to be, the Victimone, or wherever. I'm butchering that quote.
That's Victimone, that's a jazz singer from the 50s. It's Mike Damone, the guy from Fast Times at Ridgemont High, who's he's this ticket scalper, and he's trying to teach his friend how to pick up a girl, how to go on a date, how to get the woman. And his one bit of advice that I always remember is, act like wherever you are, that's the place to be. Look at this. Isn't this great? And that's something like a lot of times people will go, man, I had to take the bus to work, and it was the worst day of my life, and it was a nightmare. It's like, come on, was it really a nightmare? Just be like, cool, we're on the bus. The bus is the place to be today, man, because I'm on it. And if you look at life that way, you'll always end up on the positive side of things rather than like, okay, so today I did 15 interviews. You know, press here, call here, go there. What a tough day you're having. Oh, yeah, it's such a tough day. I get to come and hang out here, hang out with you guys, have people that want to hear about this book. I'd say that this is the place to be today, here, everywhere, with all you guys, right? Absolutely.
There's an amazing story that goes along with that, but not to get too far from it while I have a chance to kind of circle back to how we started the conversation. Vic Damone versus Mike Damone. Who do you think? Who's gonna...
Well, I think Mike Damone's one of those old jazz singers smoking the jazz cigarettes and doing the heroin and stuff, so that makes him a little crazier.
A little wiry.
Yeah. Although Damone will fight in his towel, as we saw in the locker room. He will do that. So
he will.
Mike Damone, yeah.
Yeah, Mike Damone.
If anyone doesn't know what we're talking about, like, what the hell are these guys talking about?
I mean, I think that means we're old. At that point is what that means. Or we have great taste.
Pop culture mavens is what we are.
Precisely. There we go. I've never been a maven before. That's exciting. Thank you. All right. It's a big day for me.
I'm not sure even what that means, but we're mavens.
Oh, I'm going to own it.
Let's hear it for the mavens.
Round of applause for the mavens. Mutual mavens. I don't want to give away anything that's in the book, but it is a remarkable story.
I always, let me tell you something. I always hate, and I don't want to cut you off, I always hate when I have guests on Talk is Jericho, my podcast. They're putting out a book and go, I don't want to tell you about that because it's in the book. The book was always better than the actual story, but if there's some stories you want to ask about, we can talk about that too. So don't think like, I'm not going to tell you guys anything what's in this book, just buy it. No, we're not going to do that.
Well, there's a particular story I'm like within my top 3, and I think it's one of your favorites we were saying as well, and it's when you got to meet Keith, the man, the myth, the legend, and sort of how that all came about. And that's in the Damone chapter, I believe, is where that all ties.
No, that's the Keith Richards principle.
That's the Keith Richards principle.
And the principle on that. So this is when...
Confusing my cool guys.
That's okay. This is when I had the opportunity to meet Keith Richards with an assist from Jimmy Fallon and Vince McMahon, which just that alone, like Fallon, Keith, and Vince are all involved in this amazing tale about this time I had the chance to meet Keith at 30 Rock on Jimmy's show, but we had Raw in Meadowlands Coliseum in Jersey. So if I could be there on Monday at 5, I'd get to meet Keith. But as you know, Monday at 5, to get back to Jersey, even though it's only 9 miles, it could take you 9 hours. So, right? So I had to decide, is it worth it? And what happens if I don't get back in time? What happens if there's an accident in the tunnel? So I had to go ask Vince to get his permission. And we had a conversation, came to an agreement. And I had, as long as I get back in time, don't fuck me on this, Chris, is what he said. And I said, like... Yeah, and I said, I'll be back, but can you move my segment back on Raw to like maybe the 2nd hour or 3rd hour? And he's like, I'll see what I can do. Anyways, came in to meet Keith. Met Keith, had a great conversation, hilarious story, and then I made it back in time for Raw and found out that my segment had been moved to the 10 o'clock hour by Vince. So the point of that one is, it's a great story that I really wanted to tell, but what's the principle on that? And I started really looking into the story, and I realized this is something else that we do a lot of times, focusing on the reasons why something won't work and why something can't happen, rather than focusing on the reason why you can make it work. Make it work.
Here you have to go to work this morning, drink some more coffee.
That's right. Yeah, make it work. If you want to do something, don't look at the reasons why you can't. Look at the reasons why you can and make it happen.
And it's a great and valuable lesson, and it's tied to this really amazing story, guys. It's in the book. I want to talk to you a little bit about Vince McMahon and your relationship with Vince McMahon and what it's like, because there are these great moments. Without question, you credit him a lot for the work ethic that you've sort of learned and been instilled with. But you do go through these moments within these stories, these roller coaster rides of like, I can't believe this guy's screwing me over again. And then you get to the end and you're like, oh, maybe he didn't screw me over. Maybe he knew all along. Is it a frustrating existence to have that relationship?
It's not frustrating at all. It's actually an amazing relationship that I have with Vince. And the thing I love about Vince, he's such an intriguing character. And all of these stories that I'm talking about, you'll see kind of behind the mind, and usually he's right about the things that I originally think is wrong. Like even we have a really tight relationship too. So I see another side of him that a lot of people don't. And he'll probably never write a book because he doesn't like talking about himself. So if he doesn't like talking about himself, I'll talk about him in my book. Because they're, like I said, I think in all my books, Vince has been kind of a centerpiece. And this one, he takes a lot of space because I just love these stories of working for this a billionaire pop culture icon who created this behemoth that's going to be around forever, but he still loves dick and fart jokes. And the dichotomy of that is what I really love doing, like these character studies of this intriguing, brilliant man.
Well, I loved like the little window into the reality of being that person, of someone who's capable of sort of manufacturing this and still being built like a brick shit house, right? And there's that one moment where you guys are coming back on the plane. I forget where you're heading, but it's 4:30 in the morning. You're
New York.
You're coming to New York, and you're exhausted, and you're just landed,
and drunk.
And drunk. You've been drinking. Yeah. It's amazing. You get down, and what's the first thing Vince asks you want to do?
Yeah, we take a plane from Orlando to New York because I have to do press in the morning, so he lets me ride in his private plane. And we start drinking, and we're hanging out, talking about AC/DC, the Stones, drinking. We land at 4:30 in the morning. He goes, "Do you want to go to the gym with me?" I'm like, "What? You want to go to the gym? Let's go to the gym." Like, what do you mean? I got to be up at 7. So do I. You're not going to go to the gym? And I'm like, no, I'm not going to the gym. I get back to my room. I pass out of my bed. I wake up 3 hours later to a text from my boss basically calling me a pussy at 5 in the morning. My 70-year-old boss who's in the gym lifting weights drunk at 5 in the morning, and I can barely get out of bed. And that's that principle of Vince. Work hard and then work harder. Yeah. And there's nothing that Vince won't do for that company, for the betterment of himself. And that really rubs off. That's why there's such a great work ethic for people from the WWE. And you see it now, The Rock being what he is, and Cena and Batista. And I'll put myself in that category. Nobody has a book coming out, a 4th New York Times best-selling book, a #1 song on the radio, a top 20 worldwide podcast. But that's because of the work ethic that I learned from working in the WWE.
Yeah, I do wonder when you sleep, and I've come to the conclusion you don't, because of all the stuff that you do have coming out that you are doing. I do want to talk a little bit more about putting the book together, because one of the things I am curious about is, was it more difficult assembling the list of crazy stories or figuring out what those stories had taught you? Like, how did you approach putting together these principles, the list of 20, why 20, the whole nine?
It's actually funny because once this concept kind of came into my head of, and it is a form of a self-help book, my version of one.
Yeah, as close as you can.
Yeah, and then I started thinking, well, I've learned, like Gene Simmons was like, he always said, you always look like a star when you go out in public. Always look special. Always look different. And that right off the bat, that's what Gene said. So instead of just writing that as one of the principles, I'll call it the Gene Simmons principle, because that's got some sexiness to it. Like, what is that? And then I thought, well, why don't I just create all of the principles named after somebody that I learned something from? And then once that concept came, it came into my head quite easily. And then it was just a matter, because there was about, I think I started with 27 principles. Then you said whittle it down. You know, one of the ones that I wanted to use.
Fell by the wayside.
There was the Arnold Schwarzenegger principle, and I can't remember what that was, but it was kind of how he. It was the same as, I think, as the Chris Jericho principle of believing in yourself, because he wanted to be the world's biggest bodybuilder and the world's biggest movie star when he was a kid, which I thought was a direct correlation to me wanting to be a wrestler and be in a rock and roll band when I was a kid. But I realized they were very similar, so something's got to go, and I'd rather put my own name on it than his. So he's gone. There was a Bob Backlund one in there at some point that he taught me in Japan of always save your money. But then I'm like, that's not really. I mean, everyone knows that. And what kind of a story am I going to tell about that? So there was ideas that came, and then 20 principles. 20. So I think it was at 21, and then I cut another one to just leave me get it even 20. I just thought, once that came in, it just flowed really, really easy to get the ideas of either the stories I wanted to tell or the principles that I'd already thought and think of the stories around those.
Very cool. I wanted to ask you about this moment that you learn from, and again, I keep forgetting the second half of his name, this amazing wrestler that we've never heard of, Negra
Casas.
Negra
He's
Casas,
like a
yeah.
legendary Mexican wrestler.
Legendary Mexican wrestler.
Like the Ric Flair of Mexico type
Which is
thing.
pretty amazing. Yeah. And you have an experience where you guys are in the ring, and he sort of reads the energy in the room in that moment, realizes that the acrobatics aren't winning the crowd over, and changes the entire vibe and outcome of the match right there, right then, right? And it's a great story. There's a lot going on there. But I find that between what you do and what you're really great at, that improvisation and that ability to sort of read that energy, I think it's present not just in the ring, but also on stage, I'm sure, when you're playing a show with Fozzy and stuff like that. Is that vibe something that you found you're innately like kind of tapped into, being able to do stuff like that? Is that something you had to learn over time to read the room and then deliver upon it?
Well, yeah, it is a talent that you learn just for being able to call things on the fly. But another thing I love about that story, the Negra Casas principle, is the principle is to know your audience. And Negro knew that the audience wasn't buying what we were selling them and changed it mid-match. But this is also something else that you can do in life. You know, when you need to know who you're speaking to. When you go talk to your boss, you don't talk to them the same way that you talk to your best friend. If you're talking to your wife, you have to know what exactly is going on and read that room as a person as well. That will help you get a lot farther. And I love the concept of that principle because there's also another great Vince story in that.
Well, what's so funny is when I was going...
Maybe the best Vince story in that.
Maybe the best. Yeah. When I was going through my notes, that was the bad cow chapter, right?
Cow, yeah.
And I was reading I was looking for the fight, and I got to there, and I saw the bad cow. I was like, how the hell did that relate to the Vince thing? And then I had to go back and reread it. I was like, oh my God, it's a perfect correlation.
The chapter is called the Negra Casas principle, a.k.a. the bad cow incident. So
hashtag bad cow.
Hashtag bad cow. So
yeah,
we'll leave
trying.
it at that. That's one that I'm not going to tell you because that's a long, involved story, and it's a great one, but it's much better to be read. But like I said, bad cow, if that doesn't intrigue you, I don't know what will. Listen, we don't know a thing that he said, but he said bad cows in the book, so we're going to buy it tomorrow.
We've got in just a second, we're going to turn it over to audience Q&A, but there were a couple of things that I had to ask you before I did turn it over. First of all, what ultimately, if you had, I know it's like picking one of your own children, but your favorite Van Damme movie, what's your go-to when you need a little bit of comfort?
I was never a huge Van Damme guy.
It was just the game? You just loved the game?
Yeah, I liked Bloodsport because I actually saw that in the theater, but I remember the acting was so bad.
That's the point.
Like, I think, but I know, and I like bad movies, but his was beyond that. It was like, what are you going to do, call the cops? And I was like, I can't even speak English, but it's not cool like Arnold.
Yeah, fair enough.
So I'm gonna then.
He was always the Pepsi to Arnold's Coke.
Yeah,
yeah. He was.
I could say Predator, but he didn't last long in that either. So the best Van Damme movie is the one where we had like a real bad. No, the one where we played twins. That one was awful.
Double Impact,
Trouble or something.
Double Trouble. It was them and the Olsen twins, I believe, and it was Halloween themed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the best one.
Yeah.
And his last one, a buddy of mine on Twitter, I thought this was too great of a question and a great deep pull. He said, ask him to list 1,004 holds, not including the arm bar.
Gee, nothing better than a quick question for the end of the interview.
Yeah, so we'll count them off. Yeah. Is what we'll.
It's been a long time since I wrestled. It's been a few months. I'm down to about 37 holds now.
Well, I was going to ask you, do you get a lot of those callbacks, and do you ever get tired of callbacks to maybe old jokes or old things that you've thrown out there that you've had in old promos from back in the days? No, do you love it?
No, I never get sick of hearing people tell me that they had something that I've done that they remember. You know, you want to talk about the list of 1,004 holds. That's a classic bit, you know. But here's something interesting. Sometimes I forget the work that I've done. And it's not any type of hit. It's just I've done so much stuff that day after day after day after day, you forget. Yeah. So the other day with the Mayweather and McGregor fight, I remember that I had done Larry King with Mayweather years ago. So I wanted to see if I could. I remember talking to somebody, and I was like, "Hey, yeah, Mayweather's a cool guy. I did some press with him," and so I wanted to watch the interview. And then I see a picture of him and I in the ring together, and I'm like, I totally forgot that me and Mayweather had an in-ring confrontation. Exactly 8 years to the day of that fight, right? And we're faced, and I remember I watched it back, and I'm like, listen, little man, I will knock you out.
Fire. Yeah, you're on fire.
And I text Vince the picture, and I said, why didn't you book Mayweather versus Jericho? We could have made $700 million.
You were this close. You were this close.
Zero recollection of it. completely, even watching it back. So if people remember things that I've done and tell me, A, it's always appreciative. B, I love it because it helps me remember some of that stuff that kind of goes by the wayside.
Awesome. Well, credit given where it's due. At JokermanUno. Shout out to Isaac for that one. I thought that was hilarious. Let's go ahead and open it up to the crowd. First microphone right here.
Hey, Chris, how you doing?
I love the AC/DC shirt. That's what I'm doing.
I'm also been a big fan since WCW days. So
I can tell you sound like you're from the South.
Yep. Yeah, I moved up here a year and a half ago. But anyway, joking question first. Do you know what happens when you write your 4th book? Do you know what happens?
Well, but here's the thing. You can't put me on my own creation.
No, but you can get put on the New York bestseller list.
Oh, there you go. Nice.
So, now, a serious question. Of all 3 things that you've been involved in, wrestling, rock and roll, now writing your 4th book, what's just been most fulfilling to you?
I mean, people ask that, like, if you had to choose just one thing, what would it be? And the brilliancy of it is I don't have to choose because I never put myself in the box of just being one simple thing. I love wrestling. I love being in Fozzy. I love writing books. I love podcasting. I love acting, whatever it may be. So and this is another lesson you can learn is don't sell yourself short. If there's something that you want to do, don't feel like just because you're a policeman that you can't go become a fireman as well. Because I know it. Like when I wanted to become a wrestler, everyone told me I'd never do it. I did it. Then when I was going to start Fozzy, you'll never do it. I did it. Don't tell me I can't do something, because if I really believe in it, I believe in myself, I can make anything happen. So the fulfillment is just continuing to do what I love to do and entertain people and be around great people such as yourselves for 27 years now, and I'm going to do it for another 27 more. And if I make it to there, I'll do it another 27 years after that.
Our next question is going to come from right over here, gentleman with the mic.
Hey, Jericho, how you doing?
Awesome, man. Thank you.
It's finally great to meet you. I've been watching you all my life when I was a little wee lad, so it's I need to ask this one question, and it might come off like as a Steamboat moment when you met Steamboat. Will you be putting everyone in the list of Jericho? Drink it in, man.
Good stuff. But see, there's a 2-prong answer to that. First of all, whenever I do signings now, and we're about ready to do a bunch for the book, everyone goes, "Can you write? You just made the list on it." You can't just go. It doesn't work that way. You can't request to be on the list. Only I can put you on it in a good or a bad way. So don't ask. Second of all, the drink it in, man. That actually came, and there's another great principle in the book. It's called the 12th Ninja Principle via Vanilla Ice, actually, and that's another story you guys can read. But the principle of that is sometimes you got to take a step back and enjoy life. You got to, the old proverbial stop and smell the roses. And the drink it in, man, came from Paul McCartney, who every concert goes, "I'm just going to stop for a second and look at the crowd and drink it in for a bit and just enjoy this moment." Always enjoy the moments, especially when you accomplish something that you've been working on for so long. Like, for example, this book. There's so much going on right now, but I have to just sit back and appreciate like 4 books. Like, I'm pretty excited about that. And I'll give myself, the 5-minute pat on the back, then go back to work. But you have to enjoy those moments, because if you don't enjoy it, you'll just keep working and, and never really sitting back and saying, "You know what? Good job, man. You did it."
I believe we have time for 2 more. Our next one's coming from right over here with the microphone.
Hi.
Hi. What's your favorite match?
I think if I had to choose just one, it would be versus Shawn Michaels ladder match, 2008 No Mercy. And I'll tell you the reason why. The match was immaculate, as perfect of a match as I've ever had. It was for the world title, but it was the culmination of a 7-month feud that was only supposed to last for one night. And that, to me, was the epitome of a great story that just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and went from a one-night confrontation to going 7 months and culminating in a ladder match, who both of us were known as being ladder match guys for the World Championship, which was never, ever, ever in the minds when we first started it. So the journey to get there in the match itself, it would be that Shawn Michaels ladder match.
Pretty amazing. And we have time for one more question. It's going to be right over here.
Hi. I follow you on social media. I'm friends with you on Facebook. I want to know, how did you become an advocate, a very big spokesperson for juvenile diabetes?
Over the past year, 2 members of my family, very close members, were both diagnosed with diabetes, both within a very short period of time. So diabetes isn't the worst disease in the world, but it's definitely not easy. So I just really, I think charities are something that strikes you close to home. And I've had a few things over the years that I've been with, but this one really is close to home for me.
Well, I wanted to thank you because I'm diabetic, and you've been been following you, and my big inspiration, and following you, you walking your dog on the boardwalk and everything, and your band, of course. But I just want to say thank you. It's been a big pleasure to have got to know you from every part.
Well, like I said, I appreciate it. And the one thing I love about the people that I'm not even going to say fans, the Friends of Jericho thing, that really is to me like my friends. We don't know each other, but we know each other. So the thing I like best about people who appreciate my work is you guys allow me to be diverse and don't put me in a box. You know, people always, when are you going back to WWE? Well, I'm not sure, but we love Fozzy and we love the book and we can't wait to hear Talk is Jericho. Like, if Jericho's name is on it, that I'm doing 1,000% to make it great, and 99 times out of 100 it is great. And that's because you guys always follow me around. You probably think, what's he going to do next? What's this idiot doing now? You know? But without you guys, and you guys in this room and elsewhere, I wouldn't be able to get the freedom to try these things, to bring it back to you guys. I'm like a hunter going out and finding things and go, here you go, guys, eat this. And you're like, all right, a quail's egg, I'll try. Wow, it's actually really good. So you guys trust me to continue to entertain you, and I always promise that no matter what I do, if it says Chris Jericho's name on it, it's going to be 1,000% mine, under control, and the best I can possibly be, because if not, I won't do it.
Well, I think that book, yeah, absolutely. It's a great place to end it. It does beg the question, though. This is your 4th book. You're averaging a book every 3 or 4 years, give or take. Looking forward to 2020 with everything you've got going on. WWE, with Fozzy, with Talk is Jericho, the Jericho Network, the books, this. What could we possibly expect looking forward a couple of years ahead? What are you hoping for? What are you working on?
More of doing what I love to do, entertaining. Our Fozzy record comes out in October. We'll be going out on tour with that. I just shot a hilarious, ridiculous show. It's the 2nd season of a hilarious, ridiculous show that I did a few years ago in Toronto. That's continuing to grow. Like I said, I have another idea for a 5th book that's completely different from any of these, which will be just as interesting in a different way. Just to continue to creatively challenge myself. Once again, reinvent. I don't ever want to be in a rut and feel like I'm just spinning my wheels. I don't do anything for money, fortunately. I do things because I want to do them. I believe in it. So just more of that. Like I said, I never expected to be hosting a show about giant fighting robots, but it sounded pretty cool, so I did it.
Who says no to that?
Right. Who would ever say no to that? So things like that come across my desk all the time, and I'll continue to explore those things because it's fun for me, and I think people get a chance to live vicariously through those eyes. I did a show, it's coming out, I think in September. We went to Utah to search for Butch Cassidy's missing treasure. Like, who wouldn't want to do that? And this place was the middle of it was like Tatooine, man. There was nothing out there for thousands of miles. So I remember just saying, I'm looking for Butch Cassidy's gold. And we found like a slug of we found like a bullet. There's a bullet. And just stuff like that. Like, who gets to do that, man? I've never take any of that for granted. I always enjoy it and appreciate it. And once again, thanks to you guys for allowing me to do that.
Well, I couldn't fathom. We're going to applaud. You just wait. I couldn't fathom a more Chris Jericho answer to that question than more. I'm going to do more. Thank you so much for all that you have done. Guys, the book No is a 4-letter word. Available tomorrow everywhere. One more time, please join me in thanking the great Chris Jericho.